way back to the train station, I felt Lyla on my shoulders. And I ain't going to lie to you, I started crying, but they were happy tears, you know. Tears of pride, tears that Lyla's changing the system, and I am ever so proud of her.
Hi, John. Welcome back to the interview series.
Hiya.
Maybe just to give a background to the people who might not know as much about this, would you be able to give us a summary of what happened and why you've gone down this road?
Lyla, she was our youngest child, sister to our now 5-year-old Jack. She was bright, articulate, funny, caring, sharing, kind. She was full of life, you know. She had this way of lighting up every room she walked in as well. She loved animals, flowers, in particular sunflowers and pink and yellow roses. She loved music, she loved painting, she loved drawing and making people laugh. You know, she was fit as a fiddle as well, and she was only 3 weeks into her second birthday when sadly we lost her, and our worlds felt very different since. The Lyla's Law campaign was set up at the end of May last year after the preventable loss of Lyla. You know, she passed away 16 hours after being diagnosed with tonsillitis by the GP. She was actually in acute severe diabetic ketoacidosis, and it was caused by undiagnosed type 1 diabetes. At the inquest, the senior coroner issued a letter of concern to the Royal College of General Practitioners, and also the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, urging a wider approach in education kind of thing, so that T1D is at the forefront of clinicians' minds. So obviously motivated by the grief that I live with every day, and the determination I have that, you know, no other family should ever experience such a loss, Lyla's Law was launched, calling for testing when a child presents with any one of the 4 T's, the recognised symptoms, so toileting, thirsty, tiredness and thinning.
Since we last spoke, what's happened?
On the 9th of March, Lyla's Law was debated in Westminster Hall in Parliament, where the Ayes had it, which was wonderful. What was pretty poignant as well is it was a 6 p.m. debate. Normally that's when everyone wants to go home or they're falling asleep and all the rest of it. The chamber was packed with MPs, and also the gallery, that was packed too. It was a very emotional night. What struck me most of all though, Olivia, was MPs weren't just talking about experience of their constituents in their area. They were talking about their own experiences living with type 1 diabetes, and it was such a powerful, powerful debate. Petition debates can't directly change the law, but what they can do is they can influence the MPs in that room to lobby the Health Secretary and say, come on, we need to do better here. And then the following day, on the 10th of March, I met with the then Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, who made a commitment to look at all facets of Lyla's Law, which gave me hope. And then 2 months later, he was gone, because he resigned. I've kept close counsel with my local MP to make sure that momentum stays and that it doesn't waver, because you know a week in politics is a very long week. You know, I've kept in contact with the Department for Health and Social Care. I'm working closely with NHS England, and since that meeting with Mr. Streeting, the campaign has had several major breakthroughs nationally. It's been confirmed by the Department for Health and Social Care that NICE, the National Institute for Care and Excellence, has updated its NG18 guidelines to explicitly state that a child can present in diabetic ketoacidosis without a prior diabetes diagnosis, and that's a change directly linked to the Lyla's Law campaign, because I did actually write to them. I also wrote to the Care Quality Commission, CQC. They're like the regulatory authority body for health and social care settings. They've now updated their guidance, requiring that every GP practice in England has to have a glucometer testing equipment immediately available. You know, that's meters, in-date strips, lancets within resus areas of GP practices. So that's a mandatory requirement now, and it's been confirmed. NICE will convene an independent expert clinical panel, because although NICE has updated its guidelines saying that a child can present in DKA, I'm unhappy with that. I see progress, and I think let's go a little bit better than that, you know, because healthcare professionals shouldn't be looking for DKA. It's very important that it's identified, because that's when it's critical. What they should be looking for is type 1 diabetes. They shouldn't be looking for all 4 T's and the vomiting and the thrush and this and that and the other. They should be testing without assumption, rather than waiting until all 4 of them things manifest, which is where you get to a critical stage. So I wrote back to them and told them about this, and they will convene for an independent expert clinical panel with a review to recommendations on identifying type 1 diabetes in children. I'm hoping that we can have stakeholders involved in that, people with lived experience, people who have lost a child like we have, because I think it will be very powerful to take on the views of the general public as well, so that we can make sure that NICE guidelines reflect what's actually going on. And also, as well, the Getting It Right First Time programme, or GERFT, they're conducting a nationwide review as well, aimed at reducing misdiagnosis. And that's been initiated now, and hopefully we can probe further into why this is going on. I think we all know why it's going on, but to have an actual review going on, that's fantastic.
How do you feel about the progress that's been made since you started your campaign?
When I first got the letter from the Department for Health and Social Care, I got that a few days before I met with NHS England. I had to keep reading it back and thinking, this seems too good to be true, And when I went to NHS England and I said, look, does this actually mean that this is a requirement now? Does this mean that this is... Yes, John. Yes, John. Yes, John. And when I had that confirmation, I went quiet. It's like I was soaking it in, like when you're at a rock concert, when you stood there and you're just soaking in the atmosphere. That's how it felt at the time. And immediately my thoughts turned to Lyla and everyone who's been misdiagnosed and all the rest of it. And, it's deeply emotional and profoundly meaningful as well. Basically, that real concrete changes are honouring Lyla's legacy. NHS headquarters is in Leeds, and on the way back to the train station, I felt Lyla on my shoulders. And I ain't going to lie to you, I started crying, but they were happy tears of pride, tears that Lyla's changing the system, and I am ever so proud of her.
What are the next steps, in your opinion? We
need to be thinking about making sure that we're monitoring implementation of these mandatory glucometers being in situ across GP surgeries in the UK. How are we going to distribute that information to all the GP surgeries? So I have an idea. I'm going to get in touch with all the integrated care boards, which will take time. Maybe the primary care networks too. There's some good GPs out there that suspect it's type 1 diabetes, but they go about it the wrong way. They send off for bloods rather than finger pricking. You send off for bloods, that's dangerous because every minute matters, particularly if you're presenting with all of the 4Ts. So finger prick, you'll get instant confirmation. Finger prick and refer. It's that easy. I'm working with NHS England on that. And Digibeat, we are making a 15-minute punchy, impactful training module on the dangers of, going undiagnosed and DKA. My aim is to make that go mandatory, which means I'll have to go back to MPs and say, look, this needs doing. It's 15 minutes. It's not going to be time restrictive. It's not going to impact on resources. You can literally do it before you start work, dinner break, in between appointments, so there's no excuses there. We need to make sure that we're advancing legislative ambition as well of Lyla's law. I won't rest until we're making sure that routine testing becomes a standard requirement whenever a child presents with symptoms.
You mentioned that you've been in close contact with your local MP, so what's it been like working with her and how has she supported you in this process?
She was brilliant from the start. She just came straight back and went, John, I'm so sorry. Is there anything Diana can help with? I said, yeah, you can help me get the law changed. And then we met pretty quickly. On the day I met Diana Johnson, we just hit 10,000, which showed just how powerful the campaign is. And when we got to 100,000, even Diana said to me, I've never met a campaigner like you. How you're so relentless and you will attack anything and anybody to make sure that you're protecting and safeguarding people going forward. She's been a tower of strength for the campaign. I ask her anything diabetes related, whether it be PIP reforms, which is like disability payments to children living with type 1, and how that they have to go through this rigorous assessment program once they turn to adulthood. She comes back with an answer every time. She really believes in this campaign, and I'm very proud of her for that. I know a lot of MPs get a bad rap, but I can't fault her for what she's done for our family and the type 1 community.
Thank you, John. And again, I wish you the best with this, and I hope that we're able to help you as well moving forward.
Thank you so much, Olivia, and try and stay cool, won't you?